working on this. Thank you.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. Ana Miranda is the next speaker.
Comisario, dígale al señor Borrell que precisamos más.
Commissioner, please tell Mr. Borrell that we need more international pressure on Israel to stop this genocide and to stop things getting even worse in Gaza. Recently, I was at the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza with other MEPs. Among ambulances and tanks, you can see the blockage of the border. More than 2,000 trucks with humanitarian aid waiting to go across when 1 in 6 children are suffering from malnutrition in Gaza. It's immoral that you'd have trucks like this. Look at this. Trucks waiting at the border when you have children dying of malnutrition.
Any signs cannot be shown.
Vimos el centro logístico.
We saw the Red Crescent Humanitarian Center, where there's aid coming from 21 international agencies, 40 countries, food, medicines, etc., shelter, all blocked at the border. After seeing Palestinian children in Al Arish Hospital, I'm really speechless. All of the agencies say that the situation is about to collapse because of the speaker's cut off.
Intervention. Thank you very much. Next speaker, Señor Urbán Crespo, por favor.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Genocide, occupation, ethnic cleansing. Israel is organizing a new Nakba with the complicity of European governments. Yesterday, I came back from the Rafah crossing. Just a few meters away, there were people crowding the area. There should be trucks, so many trucks going through, but only 5 are allowed through every day when they need 600. Israel is using hunger as a weapon of war. We have to put an end to this complicity. We need to take specific action to put an end to these barbaric acts. You know, Commissioner, that we need to have an arms embargo and to suspend the association agreement with Israel. What are we waiting for? Do you want this genocide to go further? Commissioner, also, what will the European Commission do when it comes to UNRWA funding? Will it disperse what is necessary, or will it contribute to be seen as criminals, as Israel wants it to do? Now, history is staring at us and time is running out.
There's calls in this House for funding to be suspended from UNRWA, and there's proof that maybe up to 5 people were some way complicit with the attacks on the 7th of October. Yet, the Israeli Defence Forces and its government are in Gaza at the moment pillaging and plundering and murdering people, according to the International Court of Justice, according to international law, and according to a humanitarian law and just a basic human decency. And yet we have people in this House calling for funding to be cut from UNRWA that is supporting and maintaining the lives of ordinary citizens in Gaza, and at the same time we have a trade association with Israel with favourable conditions, and nobody is questioning whether or not we should maintain that link. It is shameful that this House cannot even condemn what is happening, and then we go along and, with spite, call for the withdrawal of funding from UNRWA. We sincerely owe an awful lot more to the people of Gaza, and I hope that everybody in this chamber will support the reintroduction of funding to UNRWA so that children and those that are most vulnerable in Gaza at the moment have the basic access to humanitarian aid.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, colleague Mr. Botenga. The floor is yours.
J'ai tellement peur.
I'm so scared. Please come and get me. Come and get me. Are you going to come and get me?
on the telephone a little 6-year-old Palestinian girl talking to the emergency services, is terrified, in the car with a family fleeing the Israeli bombs. They crossed an Israeli tank. Her uncle was sidelined, stood in the way, but the tank fired anyway. So they're stuck in the car in the middle of the bodies of her family that have been killed. Then the call was interrupted and her body was found only a few days later. I will never forget that voice of Hint on the telephone. Her death shows in and of itself the genocidal character of the war that Israel is pursuing. And I won't ever forget either that this House, this European Union, has not called for a cease to the export of war and weapons to this area. That is shameful in itself.
Yes.
Formand, og jeg vil sige, det har været en rigtig god debat i dag, hvor så...
Thank you. This was a very fruitful debate. Many have maintained the idea that the massacre in Gaza has to come to an end and that we need a two-state solution. But there is something shameful, and that is that we've heard words said about the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, that is asking for aid for Gaza and is asking for a ceasefire. It's crystal clear what we need to do. It seems that this ruling is seen as just one little point in the debate. This is a very important international law binding instrument. We're talking about a huge threat. It's a huge threat and danger if we ignore the ICJ and its ruling. We have to make sure that we're not seen as hypocrites by the rest of the world. We have to take the ICJ seriously. So the EU and the member states have to respect the ruling, and my member state is not respecting it. 30,000 people have been killed, including 13,000 children, and many have not had any humanitarian aid for 30 days, according to UNRWA. The tragic death toll and results of the Israeli attacks in Gaza. We're talking about a siege, and now there might be a ground offensive in Rafah. And then look at what's happening in Lebanon. They're spreading war there. For more than 140 days of this genocide, the European Union, member state governments, and the European Parliament are disgracefully supporting the murderous state of Israel. And they are avoiding mention of ceasefire with the UK and NATO. They're preparing a military offensive in the Red Sea, which means that this could all become a powder keg. Greece is also coordinating this with New Democracy, PASOK, and other parties. But the people are supporting the Palestinians so we can stop the onslaught. Israeli occupation has to come to an end. We need an independent state. We need 1967 borders and Jerusalem as a capital.
Mr. Wallace, please.
President, over 12,000 Gazan children murdered in a few months. UNICEF warns the Gaza Strip is about to see an explosion in preventable child deaths that will compound the already unbearable level of child deaths in Gaza. We have been warning for weeks that the Gaza Strip is on the brink of a nutrition crisis. Food deliveries are drastically inadequate. UN experts said last week that Palestinian women and girls continue to be raped, tortured and executed by the Israeli military in the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Women and children are being arbitrarily executed by the IDF. The Israelis are brazenly ignoring the binding ICJ court orders to halt the threat of genocide against the people of Gaza. Israel is failing to comply with its obligations under the Genocide Convention, and yesterday the EPP won a vote to take the reference to the ICJ ruling off the agenda. The European Parliament is engaging in genocidal denial. We're watching the total destruction of place designed to obliterate past, present and future for Palestinians. This is pure evil and a genocide.
Next speaker, Mrs. Daly, please.
Thanks, President. On the 26th of January, the International Court of Justice ruled that there's a plausible risk of genocide in Gaza. It ordered Israel to stop killing civilians. Israel continued. So the legal obligations on EU member states are very clear. The Genocide Conventions require states to avoid complicity. The EU common position on arms exports bans exporting arms where there's a clear risk they'll be used to violate international law, and the UN has warned that such transfers must cease. Yet, France dissembles, hiding behind secrecy and Israeli assurances, while Germany has increased its exports tenfold last year, 90% since October 7th. Ireland doesn't even ask Butcher Biden what's coming through Shannon Airport from the US on the way to the Middle East. What sort of people are ye? In 1982, arch-conservative pro-Israelis Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan stopped arms to Israel during a war. But in 2024, European Greens, Social Democrats and Liberals are arming a genocide. Shame on ye. International law and humanity requires lethal arms to Israel. Must stop now.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Mr. Pimenta Lopez, please.
Thank you, Madam President. The EU's institutions are still sitting on their hands, speaking rhetorically, despite what's happening in Gaza. This is complicity and cynicism. A case was brought at the ICJ about the risk of genocide, more than 6,000 women and children, the destruction of all of the essential infrastructure, the imposition of a criminal blockage on the border, preventing essential humanitarian aid from getting through to the Gaza Strip, more than 2 million displaced persons, malnutrition, suffering, death. We appreciate the 88 members who have supported a reinforcement of UNRWA. It's very important that UNRWA should be strengthened. The rest are complicit in this genocide against the Palestinian people. The Commissioner spoke of more than 65,000 dead, while scores of aid trucks are queuing at Rafah. What are we waiting for to strengthen support for UNRWA and to demand a permanent ceasefire and to recognise the state of Palestine? What are we waiting for?